Welcome back. It's the 28th annual Phyllis Schlafly Collegians Summit. We're winding down, but with a wonderful final guest, batting cleanup, and we're really excited about this. And for our young people that have been listening, and of course watching this on recorded, this is a great way to finish. General Flynn just gave us some marching orders, and now we go to Seth Dillon. Seth Dillon. Now we asked Seth for a bio. And, it's a Babylon Bee. So he sent us, I'm just going to read his bio the way he sent it. Here it is. Quote, Seth Dillon, may he live forever, is the CEO of the Babylon Bee, the world's most trusted, factually accurate news source. He also co-founded Not the Bee, a popular humor-based entertainment site, and he invests in startups when he's not owning the libs for Jesus, period. He lives with his wife and 44 sons in Juno Beach, Florida. I don't know if that's a misprint. Anyway, welcome, Seth Dillon. How are you? Two sons. How are you, Seth? I'm great. Listen, first of all, you beat the New York Times today. So we don't get to say that very often. So, before we get into anything about the Babylon Bee or what your history is, you beat the New York Times and you were on Tucker Carlson, I think, earlier tonight. Tell us what exactly happened.
And it wasn't an opinion piece. They were stating this as a fact in a news article. And we objected, obviously, very strongly to that characterization. We're not a far-right misinformation site. We're just a satire site that makes jokes on the internet. So, we objected very strongly. They made an edit that wasn't really satisfactory. So we sent them a demand letter. And we said, we're going to sue you if you don't correct this article. And to my shock and surprise, a week later, they reached out to us and told us that they had, in fact, corrected the article. So they removed those false defamatory statements from the article. And we notched that as a big win. But it's weird when you run a satire site to have to be dealing with legal issues and sending demand letters and going on the news to talk about it. We like to make jokes and keep things light. So
right.
It's a little uncomfortable for me to be in this serious situation where we're talking about litigation and stuff like that. But I think it's important that we keep these sites, these reliable sources, I put that in scare quotes, reliable sources, they like to mischaracterize us for a reason. They want us deplatformed, and the way to deplatform us is to lump us in with fake news. If they can do that, then they can get us off the social networks, and they can essentially kill our business. So we have to take it seriously whether we want to or not.
Well, and it really is extraordinary. And if you people look on social media, you'll see the letter and the demand letter and the success. So congratulations. And you're right. I think the lesson for anyone, but especially young people, is you got to fight back. You cannot take it, because by the time you're done taking it, as you point out, you're lumped in with fake news. You're characterized. What happens if you do that is the next site, Newsweek or Washington Post, quotes the New York Times and says, as the New York Times called them, a right-wing site. And you can't make the Washington Post correct the New York Times if the New York Times hasn't had to correct themselves. And that's just a little bit of a lesson. Seth, we're talking to college students here, and that's a large part of our audience. We've lots of people because we're virtual right now. But writing humor, now I'm back to Babylon Bee. Mm-hmm. It's a real talent, right? This is it's a skill to be writing humor. It's, there's lots of people, and I'm not joking when I think of Conan O'Brien went out to Hollywood as a writer first before he was ever performing as a writer. It's a real, is that your background? Or is that something you were doing?
Just for fun. I was never employed anywhere as a comedy writer. I actually just got involved in the Babylon Bee from the business side initially. I saw it as a great investment opportunity. I didn't found it. This guy, Adam Ford, founded it back in 2016. I acquired it from him in 2018. He's still around. He still owns a percentage of it, and he still has some influence in the business. But I always had a tremendous appreciation for satirists and for humor and the effectiveness of humor. I dabbled in it a little bit on my own. And when I saw the Babylon Bee being shared and going viral, I thought to myself, man, I wish I'd started that. This is a great site. So it's the most fun thing I do for sure every day since I've been involved in it. But that's not my background from a professional standpoint. I was in marketing and an entrepreneur and all of that. So
for young people, can you be a writer at the Babylon Bee? Is that a thing?
It is a thing, yes. In fact, we've discovered some of our talent, some of our full-time staffers we discovered because they just submitted ideas to us. Our editor-in-chief, in fact, was the first one that we found who is just sending us emails with funny ideas for articles, and he was actually writing out the articles and submitting them to us unsolicited.
Wow.
And he was really talented. He had some good stuff. So when we see good stuff, we ask for more of it. And if it's consistently good, you got a job.
We're talking with Seth Dillon, the CEO of the Babylon Bee. And so in a world of fake news, I'm being serious now, where CNN looks like satire, you see a Babylon Bee headline and you'll see the CNN next to each other. You're not sure which is the satire. And this is a serious question, where news has gotten more absurd and your satire. How do they fit together?
Well, I hear from people all the time. They say, you guys have your work. Your work is so easy. It's got to be, your job's got to be so easy because the world is so crazy. And I correct them. I say, no, it's actually the opposite. When the world is this crazy and things are this absurd and extreme positions and views and behavior are so commonplace, the challenge of comedy and the challenge of satire exaggerates the truth, right? So we've got to go a step beyond where things currently and presently are. So as extreme as things are, we've got to go beyond that and exaggerate it. That's actually very challenging in today's environment. I mean, when you've got CNN reporters standing in front of burning buildings and saying the situation here is mostly peaceful, I mean, that kind of stuff. That's the kind of stuff you expect to see in a comedy show. You expect to see it in an SNL skit. You don't expect to see it in reality. So in that environment, I think it actually makes comedy more challenging because there is, there's this common misperception or misconception that satire has to be so absurd no one could possibly believe it's true. If people are believing it's true, then we must be messing up. We're not doing our job right. That's just ridiculous. Jokes are funny because of how close they are to the truth, not because of how far they are from it.
Right.
You hear that saying, there's a grain of truth in every joke, or it's funny because it's true.
Right.
Jokes have to have a close attachment to reality in order to work. So when people believe that our stuff is true, that is not an indictment of satire. It's not an indictment of the satirist. It's an indictment of whoever it is that we're satirizing.
We're talking with Seth Dillon of the Babylon Bee. But another thing, in the woke culture, in the cancel culture, isn't one of the defenses, well, that was satire. And so I can't remember now who wrote an essay, and I think it was a woman essayist, and it was she is a lefty, but she wrote it sort of, and it was a satire, and it was so good that you weren't sure it was satire, and she said, no, it's satire. Oh, no, she was writing it in Harvard. She was a student at Harvard, and she wrote an essay, and it was satire, but it was so believably serious. Like it had that kind of sheen of like earnestness. I think it was like in defense of white privilege or something. And she said, no, it was satire. And if you can prove it's satire, isn't that kind of a defense? That's your fault. You could say, well, I don't blame me. It's not cancel culture. It's just satire. On the other hand, some people say some things now. I mean, how do you handle language where they're using language as a way to cut you off? I mean, I guess, what's your observation on that for young people? And then how do you do it as a business model? How close to the line on the cancel culture can you get before you are worried that you're going to get canceled? Have you been Have you been canceled? Have you been suspended?
There have been attempts. We've been suspended on Twitter before. We've been labeled hate speech by Facebook. We've been told by Facebook that we'll be deplatformed or demonetized if we keep sharing fake news. Cancel culture looks a little different for us. Cancel culture, typically when you think of cancel culture, you think of somebody they've tweeted something regrettable in the past and somebody digs it up and then they have to apologize for it and they lose their job and all of that. With us, it's a little bit different. With us, it's really, there's this roundabout way they're doing it where we are legitimately satire. We've always been a satire site. We're not. This is not like a student writing a paper and there's like no context there for satire, so you don't know whether to believe it or not. Our website is pretty clearly satire to anyone who looks at it. You read some of our stories, read our about page, and we've been around for a long time. So when you take into account that context, there's really no excuse for suggesting that we're anything other than just genuine satire. But it's a strategy that the media has tried to use to cancel us. And the strategy is lump us in with fake news. If they can treat us like fake news, then they can get us deplatformed because the social networks are so concerned with fake news spreading on their platforms. So all it takes is, like you said, if the New York Times says it, and then Wikipedia picks it up, and then a couple other places cite Wikipedia and the New York Times, you've got all these reliable sources. and it's not based on anything. When I try to think about, well, what possible reason could the New York Times have for thinking that we're just pretending to be satire, that we're not actually satire? There's really no reason for it. They're just making it up. And then other people can cite that fabricated story, and it becomes this vicious circular thing where these reliable sources are all quoting each other. So, but that's what cancel culture looks like for us, is that attempt to get us labeled as fake news. But it is challenging because, you know, you're mentioning, you know, how words can be used against you and everything. It's satire for us it's not just a defense to be able to say whatever we want. It's a legitimate project. You know, I think satire is a valuable tool. Humor, ridicule, mockery, these are valuable tools to strike back against bad ideas.
Right.
And we have a First Amendment right to use these tools. So there needs to be a robust defense of satire whenever it's under attack.
We're talking again, Seth Dillon, the Babylon Bee. Seth, young people, though, if you try to be a satirist, it's almost like what you said. You have to almost lay down the predicate so that you can do the satire. Otherwise, good satire will be easy to put you in with the bad guys, right? I mean, that's sort of the trick. You can't really emerge on social media tomorrow and be a satirist too easily, because if you do it well and you're edgy, you're gone before you can sort of lay down the brickwork that lets you say, no, I was a satirist, right? I mean, this is you know, Seth, there's an essay, and I tell our collegians especially to read this essay. Václav Havel in the 1970s wrote an essay called "The Power of the Powerless," and he talks about how under the Soviet communist regime in what became the Czech Republic, you would have grocers put a sign in the front window that said, "Workers of the world unite." And Havel says they didn't do it because they were told to. They didn't have to be told. They didn't do it because it was a rule. They didn't have to have a rule. They did it because they needed to signal to the powers that be that that they were on the it was a benign enough statement. It's not that dramatic. It's not like I love communism or something. It's workers of the world unite. You put it up. It's sort of benign. It signals the powers that be that you're on board. And more importantly, it makes a signal to the people, it's safe to come here because I'm not a threat, because I'm okay. It's a little bit like when I walk around Capitol Hill, Seth, I see all these churches have a Black Lives Matter banner out. It's like signaling. It's a little bit like virtue signaling, except it's more insidious because you start to say, well, I got a funny line I could say back to that. And if I was with my buddies, I would say it out loud. But if I put that on Twitter, they're not going to see it as, I can't put the S on the end that says satire. And for young people, I think the lesson of the Havel essay is that self-censorship becomes a habit because of the way things have developed. And I think that's a real threat to satire and to free expression.
I think it's the biggest threat. When I give talks, especially to young people, and they ask me, what can I do to make a difference, or how am I supposed to speak up for the truth when I could lose my job and I have a family to feed or something like that. And the problem is, and this is the harsh truth. It's the hard truth to hear because it requires people to take risk and do something bold. But until people in large numbers stand up and refuse to self-censor and say what they think and defend their right to say it and to think it, until they do that, they're going to continue to feel this mounting social pressure to stay silent. When everybody keeps quiet because of that pressure, it just enables the tyrants. It does the tyrant's work for him when you self-censor. So I'm a strong advocate for bold speech, free speech, and I think that I think it's the kind of thing that we need to be willing to take the risk and say, because otherwise, nobody else, if we don't do this together and do it collectively and stand up and speak out boldly, no one else is going to be emboldened, and this problem is only going to get worse. So I think it just has to be something that we stand up and do together, lock arms.
I got a message here, and the question is this: but in the world of Facebook and Twitter and YouTube, where the business model is to get agitated responses, right? You can see it in big tech. I'm now extrapolating what someone sent me, but your business model relies on something similar, right? You got to get people to be excited. On Twitter, how do you get somebody excited? You say something outrageous or clever, people pass it around, and so, and so how do you not fall into the trap of having to chase the, I don't know, outrage machine to get your business model to work? Because I'm overstating what somebody texted me or emailed me here. How do you work that out?
Well, it doesn't always have to be outrageous. Sometimes it can just be funny. If you're a funny personality online, for us, it's really about being funny. If the joke lands and people think it's funny, they're going to share it. It's not really for us about really angering somebody, getting somebody upset, or convincing people that a story is true when it's not. That's not the goal. The target is to just make a point, speak truth to culture, do it in a humorous way, ridicule bad ideas that are deserving of it. And we try to do that in as lighthearted a way as possible, and not in a harsh way where we're engaging in ad hominem attack and just attacking people for the sake of attacking them because we don't like them. So we're not chasing rage clicks or anything like that with the Babylon Bee. I don't think that that's an accurate way of describing it, but I do see how it is. These systems are designed that way. You're not going to get much of a response. Look, if I post something on my personal Facebook, for example, that's just like a thought or a picture or something like that, I get hardly any engagement. I've got to say something really controversial, say something that really gets people fired up. So it's definitely rigged for that. But yeah, and I'm not sure exactly. I'm not sure exactly how you get around that. In our case, we just try to be as funny as possible rather than as incendiary as possible.
Who's the funniest personality on social media that's not at the Babylon Bee? Is there somebody who stands out that regularly is really good at making you guys laugh and go, oh, that's a good one? Is there anybody who jumps out?
There are some people that jump out. I mean, there's some comedians that have come on the scene recently. Who've done some great work with commentary on woke culture and stuff like that. Ryan Long comes to mind. He made a video recently that went crazy viral about how a woke person and a racist just agree on everything. They're trying to have this debate and dialogue, but everything that they say the other person agrees with totally.
Yeah.
And it's just totally brilliant. I mean, stuff like that where you do this little sketch comedy that's really, really nailing home a point. I always appreciate that. So I like following people like that and getting ideas.
Is there any? Is the Babylon Bee going to become a YouTube channel? Are they going to be? Are you going to have? Now that we're not having in the great breakdown, the COVID breakdown, that we're out of that now, can you do events? I mean, I hate to do this, but I'm showing I don't know what, but my family watches Dude Perfect, and they're thrilled that Dude Perfect is going out on tour. Right. Yeah. So is Babylon Bee going to do a YouTube channel and go on tour?
Yeah, we are starting to dabble in YouTube videos. We're doing short sketch comedy. We're doing animations. We have a really talented animation staff, which is really cool because we can do little almost South Park Family Guy style animation videos. Just hysterical stuff. Sometimes it piggybacks on the back of an article. We did an article about how Gavin Newsom was running through the streets yelling, "You can open now," to all these dilapidated closed buildings that have been abandoned for a long time. Right. And we turned that article into a video, and it was even funnier in video format. So yeah, we are reaching and branching out into that, and the growth is tremendous. The YouTube channel's taken off like crazy. So events, I don't know. I'd love to do some events. I do want to do a night with the Babylon Bee type thing in the near future where we host an event somewhere and invite people to it. Our subscribers would love that. But yeah, the video is a huge investment for us this year and next. Yeah.
Well, listen, Seth, thanks for taking the time. I know it's been a long day. Beating the New York Times takes a lot out of most normal people, so it's very cool that you could jump on with us. We're big fans of the Babylon Bee, and I think the takeaway for our collegians is if you're funny and you write enough, Seth will hire you. I heard him say it. I'm not sure it's a binding contract over a virtual presentation, but it's close enough. So thanks very much, Seth, for the time.
Thank you so much.
All right, Seth Dillon, everybody, the Babylon Bee.